Kazakhstan is a landlocked country primarily in Central Asia, with a small portion situated in Eastern Europe. It borders Russia to the north and west, China to the east, Kyrgyzstan to the southeast, Uzbekistan to the south, and Turkmenistan to the southwest, with a coastline along the Caspian Sea. Its capital is Astana, while the largest city and leading cultural and commercial hub is Almaty. Kazakhstan is the world's 9th largest country by land area and the largest landlocked country. Hilly plateaus and plains account for nearly half its vast territory, with lowlands comprising another third. Its southern and eastern frontiers are comprised of low mountainous regions. Kazakhstan has a population of 20 million and one of the lowest population densities in the world, with fewer than 6 people per square kilometer. Ethnic Kazakhs constitute a majority, while ethnic Russians form a significant minority. Officially secular, Kazakhstan is a Muslim-majority country with a sizable Christian community. Kazakhstan has been inhabited since the Paleolithic era. In antiquity, various nomadic Iranian peoples such as the Sokha, Massage Thai, and Scythians dominated the territory, with the Achaemenid Persian Empire expanding towards the south. Turkic nomads entered the region from the 6th century. In the 13th century, the area was subjugated by the Mongol Empire under Genghis Khan. Following the disintegration of the Golden Horde in the 15th century, the Kazakh Khanate was established over an area roughly corresponding with modern Kazakhstan. By the 18th century, the Kazakh Khanate had fragmented into 3 juz, tribal divisions, which were gradually absorbed and conquered by the Russian Empire. By the mid-19th century, all of Kazakhstan was nominally under Russian rule. 14. Following the 1917 Russian Revolution and subsequent Russian Civil War, it became an autonomous republic of the Russian SFSR within the Soviet Union. Its status was elevated to that of a Union Republic in 1936. The Soviet government settled Russians and other ethnicities in the republic, which resulted in ethnic Kazakhs being a minority during the Soviet era. Kazakhstan was the last constituent republic of the Soviet Union to declare independence in 1991 during its dissolution. Kazakhstan dominates Central Asia both economically and politically, accounting for 60% of the region's GDP, primarily through its oil and gas industry. It also has vast mineral resources, ranking among the highest producers of iron, silver. Kazakhstan also has the highest Human Development Index ranking in the region. It is a unitary constitutional republic, however, its government is authoritarian. Nevertheless, there have been incremental efforts at democratization and political reform since the resignation of Nursultan Nazarbayev in 2019, who had led the country since independence. Kazakhstan is a member state of the United Nations, World Trade Organization, Commonwealth of Independent States, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, Eurasian Economic Union, Collective Security Treaty Organization, Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, Organization of Islamic Cooperation, Organization of Turkic States, and International Organization of Turkic Culture. As it extends across both sides of the Ural River, considered the dividing line separating Europe and Asia, Kazakhstan is one of only 2 landlocked countries in the world that has territory in 2 continents. The other is Azerbaijan. With an area of 2,700,000 square kilometers, equivalent in size to Western Europe, Kazakhstan is the 9th largest country and largest landlocked country in the world. While it was part of the Russian Empire, Kazakhstan lost some of its territory to China's Xinjiang province and some to Uzbekistan's Karakalpakstan Autonomous Republic during Soviet years. It shares borders of 6,846 kilometers with Russia, 2,203 kilometers with Uzbekistan, 1,533 kilometers with China, 1,051 kilometers with Kyrgyzstan and 379 kilometers with Turkmenistan. Major cities include Astana, Almaty, Karandy, Shymkent, Atyrau, and Oskman. It lies between latitudes 40 degrees and 56 degrees north, and longitudes 46 degrees and 88 degrees east. While located primarily in Asia, a small portion of Kazakhstan is also located west of the Urals in Eastern Europe. Kazakhstan's terrain extends west to east from the Caspian Sea to the Altai Mountains and north to south from the plains of western Siberia to the oases and deserts of Central Asia. The Kazakh steppe, plain, with an area of around 804,500 square kilometers, occupies 1/3 of the country and is the world's largest dry steppe region. The steppe is characterized by large areas of grasslands and sandy regions. Major seas, lakes and rivers include Lake Balkhash, Lake Zasen, the Charyn River and Gorge, the Ili, Itish, Ishim, Ural and Eswaya-Doria rivers, and the Aral Sea until it largely dried up in one of the world's worst environmental disasters. The Charyn Canyon is 80 kilometers long, cutting through a red sandstone plateau and stretching along the Charyn River Gorge in northern Tian Shan, Heavenly Mountains, 200 kilometers east of Almaty. The steep canyon slopes, columns and arches rise to heights of between 150 and 300 meters. The inaccessibility of the canyon provided a safe haven for a rare ash tree, Fraxinus sogdiana, which survived the Ice Age there and has now also grown in some other areas. Bygak crater is a Pliocene or Miocene asteroid impact crater, 8 kilometers in diameter and estimated to be 5 or 3 million years old. Kazakhstan's Almaty region is also home to the Mynzhylky mountain plateau. Kazakhstan has an abundant supply of accessible mineral and fossil fuel resources. Development of petroleum, natural gas, and mineral extractions has attracted most of the over $40 billion in foreign investment in Kazakhstan since 1993 and accounts for some 57% of the nation's industrial output, or approximately 13% of gross domestic product. According to some estimates, Kazakhstan has the second largest uranium, chromium, lead, and zinc reserves, the third largest manganese reserves, the fifth largest copper reserves, and ranks in the top 10 for coal, iron, and gold. In 2015, Kazakhstan's gold production is 64 metric tons. It is also an exporter of diamonds. Perhaps most significant for economic development, Kazakhstan also has the 11th largest proven reserves of both petroleum and natural gas. One such location is the Tokarevskoy gas condensate field. Kazakhstan has an extreme continental and cold steppe climate, and sits solidly inside the Eurasian steppe, featuring the Kazakh steppe, with hot summers and very cold winters. Indeed, Astana is the second coldest capital city in the world after Ulaanbaatar. Precipitation varies between arid and semi-arid conditions, the winter being particularly dry. There are 10 nature reserves and 10 national parks in Kazakhstan that provide safe haven for many rare and endangered plants and animals. In total, there are 25 areas of conservancy. Common plants are Astragalus, Gaggia, Allium, Carex, and Arxitropis. Endangered plant species include native wild apple, Malus sievisi, wild grape, Vitis vinifera, and several wild tulip species, Tulipa gragii, and rare onion species Allium carataviense, also Iris wilmotiana and Tulipa kaufmanniana. Common mammals include the wolf, red fox, Corsac fox, moose, argali, the largest species of sheep, Eurasian lynx, Pallas's cat, and snow leopards, several of which are protected. Kazakhstan's Red Book of Protected Species lists 125 vertebrates including many birds and mammals, and 404 plants including fungi, algae, and lichens. Przelsky's horse has been reintroduced to the steppes after nearly 200 years. Agriculture accounts for approximately 5% of Kazakhstan's GDP. Grain, potatoes, grapes, vegetables, melons, and livestock are the most important agricultural commodities. Agricultural land occupies more than 846,000 square kilometers. The available agricultural land consists of 205,000 kilometers square of arable land and 611,000 kilometers square of pasture and hayland. Over 80% of the country's total area is classified as agricultural land, including almost 70% occupied by pasture. Its arable land has the second highest availability per inhabitant, 1.5 hectares. Chief livestock products are dairy products, leather, meat, and wool. The country's major crops include wheat, barley, cotton, and rice. Wheat exports, a major source of hard currency, rank among the leading commodities in Kazakhstan's export trade. In 2003, Kazakhstan harvested 17.6 million tons of grain in gross, 2.8% higher compared to 2002. Kazakhstani agriculture still has many environmental problems from mismanagement during its years in the Soviet Union. Some Kazakh wine is produced in the mountains to the east of Almaty. Railways provide 68% of all cargo and passenger traffic to over 57% of the country. There are 15,333 kilometers in common carrier service, excluding industrial lines. 15,333 kilometers of 1,520 mm gauge, 4,000 kilometers electrified, in 2012. Most cities are connected by railroad. High-speed trains go from Almaty, the southernmost city, to Petropavl, the northernmost city, in about 18 hours. Kazakhstan Temir is the national railway company. KTZ cooperates with French locomotive manufacturer Alstom in developing Kazakhstan's railway infrastructure. As of 2018, Alstom has more than 600 staff and 2 joint ventures with KTZ and its subsidiary in Kazakhstan. In July 2017, Alstom opened its first locomotive repairing center in Kazakhstan. It is the only repairing center in Central Asia and the Caucasus. Astana Nerli Zol railway station, the most modern railway station in Kazakhstan, was opened in Astana on the 31st of May, 2017. According to Kazakhstan Railways, the 120,000 meters square station was expected to be used by 54 trains and would have the capacity to handle 35,000 passengers a day. There is a small 8.56 kilometers metro system in Almaty. Second and third metro lines were planned for the future. The second line would intersect with the first line at Alator and Jibek stations. The Astana metro system has been under construction, but was abandoned at one point in 2013. 181, in May 2015, an agreement was signed for the project to be resumed. There is an 86 kilometers tram network, which began service in 1965 with, as of 2012, 20 regular and 3 special routes. The Korgos Gateway Dry Port is one of Kazakhstan's primary dry ports for handling Trans-Eurasian trains, which travel more than 9,000 kilometers between China and Europe. The Korgos Gateway Dry Port is surrounded by Korgos Eastern Gate SEZ, which officially commenced operations in December 2016. In 2009, the European Commission blacklisted all Kazakh air carriers with the sole exception of Air Astana. Thereafter, Kazakhstan took measures to modernize and revamp its air safety oversight. In 2016, the European air safety authorities removed all Kazakh airlines from the blacklist, saying there was sufficient evidence of compliance with international standards by Kazakh Airlines and the Civil Aviation Committee. Kazakhstan is the 9th largest country by area and the largest landlocked country in the world. As of 2014, tourism accounted for 0.3% of Kazakhstan's GDP, but the government had plans to increase it to 3% by 2020. According to the World Economic Forum's Travel and Tourism Competitiveness Report of 2017, travel and tourism industry GDP in Kazakhstan was $3.08 billion, or only 1.6% of total GDP. The WEF ranked Kazakhstan 80th in its 2019 report. In 2017, Kazakhstan ranked 43rd in the number of tourist arrivals. In 2014, The Guardian described tourism in Kazakhstan as hugely underdeveloped, despite the country's mountain, lake, and desert landscapes. Factors hampering an increase in tourism were said to include high prices, shabby infrastructure, poor service, and the difficulties of travel in a large underdeveloped country. Even for Kazakhs, going for a holiday abroad may cost only half the price of taking a holiday in Kazakhstan. The Kazakh government in 2015 issued a Tourism Industry Development Plan 2020. It aimed to establish 5 tourism clusters in Kazakhstan: Astana City, Almaty City, East Kazakhstan, South Kazakhstan, and West Kazakhstan oblasts. It also sought investment of $4 billion and the creation of 300,000 new jobs in the tourism industry by 2020. Kazakhstan has offered a permanent visa-free regime for up to 90 days to citizens of Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Georgia, Moldova, Kyrgyzstan, Mongolia, Russia, and Ukraine, and for up to 30 days to citizens of Argentina, Brazil, Ecuador, Serbia, South Korea, Tajikistan, Turkey, UAE, and Uzbekistan. It also established a visa-free regime for citizens of 54 countries, including the European Union and OECD member states, the US, Japan, Mexico, Australia, and New Zealand. Research remains largely concentrated in Kazakhstan's largest city and former capital, Almaty, home to 52% of research personnel. Public research is largely confined to institutes, with universities making only a token contribution. Research institutes receive their funding from national research councils under the umbrella of the Ministry of Education and Science. In the business sector, few industrial enterprises conduct research themselves. Official estimates put the population of Kazakhstan at 20 million as of November 2023. As of 2024, ethnic Kazakhs are 71% of the population and ethnic Russians are 14.9%. Although their numbers has declined since the breakup of the Soviet Union. Other groups include Tatars, 1.1%, Ukrainians, 1.9%, Uzbeks, 3.3%, Germans, 1.1%, Uyghurs, 1.5%, Azerbaijanis, Dungans, Turks, Koreans, Poles, and Lithuanians. Some minorities such as Ukrainians, Koreans, Volga Germans, 0.9%, Chechens, Meskhetian Turks and Russian political opponents of the regime had been deported to Kazakhstan in the 1930s and 1940s by Joseph Stalin. Some of the largest Soviet labor camps, Gulag, existed in the country. Significant Russian immigration was also connected with the Virgin Lands campaign and Soviet space program during the Khrushchev era. In 1989, ethnic Russians were 37.8% of the population and Kazakhs held a majority in only 7 of the 20 regions of the country. Before 1991 there were about 1 million Germans in Kazakhstan, mostly descendants of the Volga Germans deported to Kazakhstan during World War II. After the dissolution of the Soviet Union, most of them emigrated to Germany. Most members of the smaller Pontian Greek minority have emigrated to Greece. In the late 1930s, thousands of Koreans in the Soviet Union were deported to Central Asia. These people are now known as Koryo-Saram. The 1990s were marked by the emigration of many of the country's Russians, Ukrainians, and Volga Germans, a process that began in the 1970s. This has made indigenous Kazakhs the largest ethnic group. Additional factors in the increase in the Kazakhstani population are higher birth rates and immigration of ethnic Kazakhs from China, Mongolia, and Russia. Kazakhstan is officially a bilingual country. Kazakh, part of the Kipchak sub-branch of the Turkic languages, is proficiently spoken by 80.1% of the population according to 2021 census and has the status of state language. Russian, on the other hand, is spoken by 83.7% as of 2021. It has equal status to Kazakh as an official language and is used routinely in business, government, and inter-ethnic communication. However, only 63.4% of ethnic Kazakhs and 49.3% of the country's population are daily speakers of Kazakh language, according to the same census. According to the 2021 census, 69.3% of the population is Muslim, 17.2% are Christian, 0.2% follow other religions, mostly Buddhist and Jewish, 11.01% chose not to answer, and 2.25% identify as atheist. Kazakhstan is a secular state whose constitution guarantees religious freedoms. Article 39 of the Constitution states human rights and freedoms shall not be restricted in any way. Article 14 prohibits discrimination on religious basis and Article 19 ensures that everyone has the right to determine and indicate or not to indicate his or her ethnic, party and religious affiliation. Islam is the largest religion in Kazakhstan, followed by Eastern Orthodox Christianity. After decades of religious suppression by the Soviet Union, the coming of independence witnessed a surge in the expression of ethnic identity, partly through religion. The free practice of religious beliefs and the establishment of full freedom of religion led to an increase of religious activity. Hundreds of mosques, churches, and other religious structures were built in the span of a few years, with the number of religious associations rising from 670 in 1990 to 4,170 today. Some figures show that non-denominational Muslims form the majority, while others indicate that most Muslims in the country are Sunnis following the Hanafi school. These include ethnic Kazakhs, who constitute about 7% of the population, as well as ethnic Uzbeks, Uyghurs, and Tatars. Less than 1% are part of the Sunni Shafi I school, primarily Chechens. There are also some Almaty Muslims. There are a total of 2,300 mosques. All of them are affiliated with the Spiritual Association of Muslims of Kazakhstan, headed by a Supreme Mufti. Eid al-Adha is recognized as a national holiday. 1/4 of the population is Russian Orthodox, including ethnic Russians, Ukrainians, and Belarusians. Other Christian groups include Roman Catholics, Greek Catholics, and Protestants. There are a total of 258 Orthodox churches, 93 Catholic churches, 9 Greek Catholic, and over 500 Protestant churches and prayer houses. The Russian Orthodox Christmas is recognized as a national holiday in Kazakhstan. Other religious groups include Judaism, the Baha'i faith, Hinduism, Buddhism, and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. According to the 2009 census data, there are very few Christians outside the Slavic and Germanic ethnic groups. Education is universal and mandatory through to the secondary level, and the adult literacy rate is 99.5%. On average, these statistics are equal to both women and men in Kazakhstan. Before the Russian colonization, the Kazakhs had a highly developed culture based on their nomadic pastoral economy. Islam was introduced into the region with the arrival of the Arabs in the 8th century. It initially took hold in the southern parts of Turkestan and spread northward. The Samanids helped the religion take root through zealous missionary work. The Golden Horde further propagated Islam amongst the tribes in the region during the 14th century. Kazakhstan is home to a large number of prominent contributors to literature, science, and philosophy: Arbari Kunanbayeli, Mukhtar Awazov, Gabit Musirapov, Karnish Satpayev, Mukhtar Sharkanov, Sakin Saifulin, Jambal Jabayev, among many others. Tourism is a rapidly growing industry in Kazakhstan, and it is joining the international tourism networking. In 2010, Kazakhstan joined the Region Initiative, which is a tri-regional umbrella of tourism-related organizations. TRI is functioning as a link between 3 regions: South Asia, Central Asia, and Eastern Europe. Armenia, Bangladesh, Georgia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, India, Nepal, Pakistan, Russia, Sri Lanka, Tajikistan, Turkey, and Ukraine are now partners, and Kazakhstan is linked with other South Asian, Eastern European, and Central Asian countries in the tourism market. In the national cuisine, livestock meat, like horse meat and beef, can be cooked in a variety of ways and is usually served with a wide assortment of traditional bread products. Refreshments include black tea, often served with milk, and dried fruits, such as dried apricots and nuts. In southern provinces, people often prefer green tea. Traditional milk-derived drinks such as ayran, shubat, and KYMYZ. A traditional Kazakh dinner involves a variety of appetizers on the table, followed by a soup and 1 or 2 main courses such as pilaf and beshbarmak. They also drink their national beverage, kumiz, which consists of fermented mare's milk. Kazakhstan consistently performs in Olympic competitions. It is especially successful in boxing. This has brought some attention to the Central Asian nation and increased world awareness of its athletes. Dmitry Karpov and Olga Rypakova are among the most notable Kazakhstani athletes. Dmitry Karpov is a distinguished decathlete, taking bronze in both the 2004 Summer Olympics and the 2003 and 2007 World Athletics Championships. Olga Rypakova is an athlete, specializing in triple jump, women's, taking silver in the 2011 World Championships in athletics and gold in the 2012 Summer Olympics. Kazakhstan's city of Almaty submitted bids twice for the Winter Olympics, in 2014 and again for the 2022 Winter Olympics. Astana and Almaty hosted the 2011 Asian Winter Games. Popular sports in Kazakhstan include football, basketball, ice hockey, bandy, and boxing. Football is the most popular sport in Kazakhstan. The Football Federation of Kazakhstan is the sport's national governing body. The FFK organizes the men's, women's, and futsal national teams. Kazakhstan has been inhabited since the Paleolithic era. The Burtai culture, 3700 to 3100 BC, is credited with the first domestication of horses. The Burtai population derived most of their ancestry from a deeply European-related population known as ancient North Eurasians, while also displaying some ancient East Asian admixture. Pastoralism developed during the Neolithic. The population was Caucaside during the Bronze and Iron Age period. The Kazakh territory was a key constituent of the Eurasian trading steppe route, the ancestor of the terrestrial Silk Roads. Archaeologists believe that humans first domesticated the horse in the region's vast steppes. During recent prehistoric times, Central Asia was inhabited by groups such as the possibly Indo-European Afanasevo culture, 29, later early Indo-Iranian cultures such as Andronovo and later Indo-Iranians such as the Sokha and Massage Thai. Other groups included the nomadic Scythians and the Persian Achaemenid Empire in the southern territory of the modern country. The Andronovo and Srubnaya cultures, precursors to the peoples of the Scythian cultures, were found to harbor mixed ancestry from the Yamnaya steppe herders and peoples of the Central European Middle Neolithic. In 329 BC, Alexander the Great and his Macedonian army fought in the Battle of Jaxartes against the Scythians along the Jaxartes River, now known as the Syr Doria, along the southern border of modern Kazakhstan. The main migration of Turkic peoples occurred between the 5th and 11th centuries when they spread across most of Central Asia. The Turkic peoples slowly replaced and assimilated the previous Iranian-speaking locals, turning the population of Central Asia from largely Iranian into primarily of East Asian descent. The first Turkic Khaganate was founded by Bumin in 552 on the Mongolian plateau and quickly spread west toward the Caspian Sea. The Göktürks drove before them various peoples, Zionites, Uyghur, Ogurs, and others. These seem to have merged into the Avars and Bulgars. Within 35 years, the eastern half and the western Turkic Khaganate were independent. The western Khaganate reached its peak in the early 7th century. The Cumans entered the steppes of modern-day Kazakhstan around the early 11th century, where they later joined with the Kipchak and established the vast Cuman-Kipchak Confederation. While ancient cities Taraz, Orliata, and Hazreti Turkestan had long served as important waystations along the Silk Road connecting Asia and Europe, true political consolidation began only with the Mongol rule of the early 13th century. Under the Mongol Empire, the first strictly structured administrative districts, ulus, were established. After the division of the Mongol Empire in 1259, the land that would become modern-day Kazakhstan was ruled by the Golden Horde, also known as the Ulus of Jochi. During the Golden Horde period, a Turco-Mongol tradition emerged among the ruling elite wherein Turkicized descendants of Genghis Khan followed Islam and continued to reign over the lands. In 1465, the Kazakh Khanate emerged as a result of the dissolution of the Golden Horde. Established by Janibek Khan and Karay Khan, it continued to be ruled by the Turco-Mongol clan of Tor, Jochid dynasty. Throughout this period, traditional nomadic life and a livestock-based economy continued to dominate the steppe. In the 15th century, a distinct Kazakh identity began to emerge among the Turkic tribes. This was followed by the Kazakh War of Independence, where the Khanate gained its sovereignty from the Shaybanids. The process was consolidated by the mid-16th century with the appearance of the Kazakh language, culture, and economy. Nevertheless, the region was the focus of ever-increasing disputes between the native Kazakh emirs and the neighboring Persian-speaking peoples to the south. At its height, the Khanate would rule parts of Central Asia and control Cumania. The Kazakh Khanate's territories would expand deep into Central Asia. By the early 17th century, the Kazakh Khanate was struggling with the impact of tribal rivalries, which had effectively divided the population into the Great, Middle and Little, or Small, hordes, juz. Political disunion, tribal rivalries, and the diminishing importance of overland trade routes between East and West weakened the Kazakh Khanate. The Khiva Khanate used this opportunity and annexed the Mangyshtau Peninsula. Uzbek rule there lasted 2 centuries until the Russian arrival. During the 17th century, the Kazakhs fought the Oirats, a federation of Western Mongol tribes, including the Dzunga. The beginning of the 18th century marked the zenith of the Kazakh Khanate. During this period, the Little Horde participated in the 1723–1730 war against the Dzunga Khanate, following their great disaster invasion of Kazakh territory. Under the leadership of Balkhash Khan, the Kazakhs won major victories over the Dzunga at the Bulanti River in 1726 and at the Battle of Enirakai in 1729. Ablai Khan participated in the most significant battles against the Dzunga from the 1720s to the 1750s, for which he was declared a Beta, hero, by the people. The Kazakhs suffered from the frequent raids against them by the Volga Kalmyks. The Kokand Khanate used the weakness of Kazakh Juz after Dzunga and Kalmyk raids and conquered present southeastern Kazakhstan, including Almaty, the formal capital in the first quarter of the 19th century. The Emirate of Bukhara ruled Shymkent before the Russians gained dominance. In the first half of the 18th century, Russian Empire constructed the Atish Line, a series of 46 forts and 96 redoubts, including Omsk, Semipalatinsk, Pavloda, Orenburg and Petropavlovsk to prevent Kazakh and Oirat raids into Russian territory. In the late 18th century, the Kazakhs took advantage of Pugachev's rebellion, which was centered on the Volga area, to raid Russian and Volga German settlements. In the 19th century, the Russian Empire began to expand its influence into Central Asia. The Great Game period is generally regarded as running from approximately 1813 to the Anglo-Russian Convention of 1907. The Tsars effectively ruled over most of the territory belonging to what is now the Republic of Kazakhstan. The Russian Empire introduced a system of administration and built military garrisons and barracks in its effort to establish a presence in Central Asia in the so-called Great Game for dominance in the area against the British Empire, which was extending its influence from the south in India and Southeast Asia. Russia built its first outpost, Orsk, in 1735. Russia introduced the Russian language in all schools and governmental organizations. Russia's efforts to impose its system aroused the resentment of the Kazakhs, and, by the 1860s, some Kazakhs resisted its rule. Russia had disrupted the traditional nomadic lifestyle and livestock-based economy, and people were suffering from starvation, with some Kazakh tribes being decimated. The Kazakh national movement, which began in the late 19th century, sought to preserve the native language and identity by resisting the attempts of the Russian Empire to assimilate and stifle Kazakh culture. From the 1890s onward, ever larger numbers of settlers from the Russian Empire began colonizing the territory of present-day Kazakhstan, in particular, the province of Semireki. The number of settlers rose still further once the Trans-Aral Railway from Orenburg to Tashkent was completed in 1906. A specially created migration department in St. Petersburg oversaw and encouraged the migration to expand Russian influence in the area. During the 19th century, about 400,000 Russians immigrated to Kazakhstan, and about 1 million Slavs, Germans, Jews, and others immigrated to the region during the first third of the 20th century. Vasily Balabanov was the administrator responsible for the resettlement during much of this time. The competition for land and water that ensued between the Kazakhs and the newcomers caused great resentment against colonial rule during the final years of the Russian Empire. The most serious uprising, the Central Asian Revolt, occurred in 1916. The Kazakhs attacked Russian and Cossack settlers and military garrisons. The revolt resulted in a series of clashes and in brutal massacres committed by both sides. Both sides resisted the communist government until late 1919. Following the collapse of central government in Petrograd in November 1917, the Kazakhs, then in Russia officially referred to as Kyrgyz, experienced a brief period of autonomy, the Alash autonomy, before eventually succumbing to the Bolsheviks' rule. On the 26th of August, 1920, the Kyrgyz Autonomous Socialist Soviet Republic within the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic was established. The Kyrgyz ASSR included the territory of present-day Kazakhstan, but its administrative center was the mainly Russian-populated town of Orenburg. In June 1925, the Kyrgyz ASSR was renamed the Kazakh ASSR and its administrative center was transferred to the town of Kizilorda, and in April 1927 to Almaty. Soviet repression of the traditional elite, along with forced collectivization in the late 1920s and 1930s, brought famine and high fatalities, leading to unrest. See also, famine in Kazakhstan of 1932–33. On the 5th of December, 1936, the Kazakh Autonomous Soviet Socialist Republic, whose territory by then corresponded to that of modern Kazakhstan, was detached from the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic and made the Kazakh Soviet Socialist Republic, a full union republic of the USSR, one of 11 such republics at the time, along with the Kyrgyz Soviet Socialist Republic. The republic was one of the destinations for exiled and convicted persons, as well as for mass resettlements, or deportations effected by the Central USSR authorities during the 1930s and 1940s, such as approximately 400,000 Volga Germans deported from the Volga German Autonomous Soviet Socialist Republic in September to October 1941, and then later the Greeks and Crimean Tatars. Deportees and prisoners were interned in some of the biggest Soviet labor camps, the Gulag, including ALZHIR camp outside Astana. Many moved due to the policy of population transfer in the Soviet Union, and others were forced into involuntary settlements in the Soviet Union. The Soviet-German War, 1941 to 1945, led to an increase in industrialization and mineral extraction in support of the war effort. At the time of Joseph Stalin's death in 1953, however, Kazakhstan still had an overwhelmingly agricultural economy. In 1953, Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev initiated the Virgin Lands campaign designed to turn the traditional pasturelands of Kazakhstan into a major grain-producing region for the Soviet Union. The Virgin Lands policy brought mixed results. However, along with later modernizations under Soviet leader Leonid Brezhnev, in power 1964 to 1982, it accelerated the development of the agricultural sector, which remains the source of livelihood for a large percentage of Kazakhstan's population. Because of the decades of privation, war, and resettlement, by 1959 the Kazakhs had become a minority, making up 30% of the population. Ethnic Russians accounted for 43%. In 1947, the USSR, as part of its atomic bomb project, founded an atomic bomb test site near the northeastern town of Semipalatinsk, where the first Soviet nuclear bomb test was conducted in 1949. Hundreds of nuclear tests were conducted until 1989 with adverse consequences for the nation's environment and population. The anti-nuclear movement in Kazakhstan became a major political force in the late 1980s. In April 1961, Baikonur became the springboard of Vostok 1, a spacecraft with Soviet cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin being the first human to enter space. In December 1986, mass demonstrations by young ethnic Kazakhs, later called the Gel-Toxin Riot, took place in Almaty to protest the replacement of the first secretary of the Communist Party of the Kazakh SSR Dinmukhamed Koneyev with Gennady Kolbin from the Russian SFSR. Governmental troops suppressed the unrest, several people were killed, and many demonstrators were jailed. 48. In the waning days of Soviet rule, discontent continued to grow and found expression under Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev's policy of glasnost, openness. On the 25th of October, 1990, Kazakhstan declared its sovereignty on its territory as a republic within the Soviet Union. Following the August 1991 aborted coup attempt in Moscow, Kazakhstan declared independence on the 16th of December, 1991, thus becoming the last Soviet republic to declare independence. 10 days later, the Soviet Union itself ceased to exist. Kazakhstan's communist-era leader, Nursultan Nazarbayev, became the country's first president. Nazarbayev ruled in an authoritarian manner. An emphasis was placed on converting the country's economy to a market economy while political reforms lagged behind economic advances. By 2006, Kazakhstan was generating 60% of the GDP of Central Asia, primarily through its oil industry. In 1997, the government moved the capital to Astana, renamed Nur-Sultan on the 23rd of March, 2019, from Almaty, Kazakhstan's largest city, where it had been established under the Soviet Union.